If Boaz was a member of your church, if one of these business leaders that have shared their passion was a member of your church, if the police commissioners, if the mayor was a member of your church, how do you pastor and how do you disciple such an individual? Unless we effectively mobilize our people, we will never truly see transformation. And so for me, the aha moment was when I discovered that people are not coming to church for the program, the people are the program. I'd like to reference John writing in 1 John chapter 2, verse 12 to 14. Speaks about children, young men, and fathers. In essence, he's talking about a process of maturity that has taken place. What does that developmental process look like? In that process of taking people from children to become young men in the kingdom, I suggest that it's helpful to ask 3 questions. And the first question would be, what does your discipleship framework look like? People are not just coming to your services to be blessed and encouraged. They're coming to be equipped and commissioned and mobilized. What does that do to your preaching? What does that do to your teaching? What does that do to every activity that you're engaged with as a local church? We have to look at the people in a different way and see them as city changers. And then ask the question, how do we equip a city changer? How do we disciple a city changer? And we defined it at 3 levels. We said if we can get an individual to have a relationship with God, to really know God, and then to live within this experience of God's engagement within them, we then want to lead them to a next dimension that we would call loving people, living beyond themselves, where they recognize that God is not just working in them, but God also wants to work through them. And then we want to take them to a sense of calling, a sense of mission, a sense of understanding that they can impact their world. What I've realized in my own life, this is how I experience things, revelation without application brings frustration. Many times the church is very clear on the broad narrative, the vision, but we don't really understand the strategy. I want to challenge us today as God's people to say, do not be afraid of strategy. God is a God that gives us an understanding of how we can engage practically. You see, if you're not going to be clear in how to truly disciple and equip and journey with your people, there is an assumption that somehow by divine osmosis they will catch on. But we are called to lead people into this understanding. The second question that you might ask yourself is how do I commission people? How do I mobilize? How do I activate this reference in my people's lives? We would often have commissioning moments in our services where we would have the police or the educators or whoever we feel God is laying on our heart to impart and release and send them and commission them. And then we invited all these medical people to come forward and we were going to pray for them. But while I was praying for them, under the prayer, I got this impression. Wouldn't it be amazing if these medical people today could pray for sick people? And they all stayed. And then the people started coming out. I mean, some of them were coming to their own physicians, standing in front of their doctors. And here the doctors were laying hands on people. It was just one of those surreal moments. And I was just crying. I was saying, Lord, this is just absolutely amazing. 2 weeks later, I ran into one of the key surgeons in our city. He says, something changed since that morning. He says, I find myself now wanting to pray for my patients. And when he shared that with me, I realized, I had been talking about engaging society, being present in society, being a faithful and fruitful presence in your society. But there was something different when I created a catalytic moment. The third question is, what do you celebrate when you gather? Because you see, whatever you celebrate, you replicate. And many times in the church, we celebrate the program of the church, but we want to see people mobilized and engaged in society. So we have to create the moments where we capture what God is doing, so that the regular people in the pew can sit and listen, and when they hear what other people are doing, they would say, but I can do that. We take children, we make them young men, and they become fathers. The church is desperate for fathers. May God raise up a generation of leaders who will not be satisfied to just entertain children, but that we will raise up our people and release them to become what God has called them to be. God bless you.